while they're coming up, I'll just introduce myself first of all. I think I'm beat. I'll start off straight off there. I usually am the one who has the weirdest and wackiest career of them all. But Andrew, I think, Botswana, that's a unique one. Thank you for that. That's a great story. I've done a whole variety of different things. My background, I was an investment banker. I did a turnaround, a $1.7 billion turnaround of a telecoms company that I took public on the NASDAQ. I did Chesterton's. I don't know if you've seen Chesterton's, a real estate agency. I took it out of receivership and grew it into second largest real estate agency in London, and a few other things. More recently, I was an exec at a dialysis company that we took to the United States. We did one of the largest raises in medtech history, $245 million at just shy of unicorn status. And I left that about 3.5 years ago to pursue a portfolio board and chair career. And I'm supporting a variety of different companies, all in healthcare and medtech. One is a radiology company. One is assisting pharmas in the lab automation space. Another one is a whole variety. So I'll leave it there, and enjoying it. It's a phenomenal space. I'm going to give a few different points before we start, and we all introduce ourselves. And we all know $600 billion is the medtech global market. Of that, depending on who you ask, 40 to 48% is in the United States. To put that into perspective, only 28% is in Europe. So the US is big. But it's not only that. The US also has 18% of its GDP spent on healthcare. That's $5 trillion. So it's not only the fact that the medtech part is big, it's just massive. The US is massive. And it's not only the fact that it's a big market, it also has some of the best hospitals. It has the best reference sites. It has the best, it has a lot of the money from an exit perspective. It has the strategics. So there are lots of reasons why we want to get into the United States. But it's also difficult. We have the FDA, clearly, but we also have different laws in different states. We have different customs. We have different perspectives. We have different. It becomes more and more convoluted the more and more we go down. So some of these are the topics that I would like to discuss with our fellow panelists, perhaps if you would like to introduce yourselves, 1 or 2 minutes. Then I'm going to ask a few questions to the panelists, and then I'll open it up to Q&A at the end. Please.
Hello.
Carolina.
Okay, cool. Hi, all. I'm Carolina. I'm the co-founder, COO of Neurovert. Just very briefly on Neurovert, we create rehabilitation. We have a rehabilitation platform using XR and AI to provide high-quality rehab to neurological and orthopedic patients. In terms of our US journey, so we are a UK-US company. The CEO sits in New York, and we have about $15 million in the pipeline from the US.
Hi, everyone. I'm Yara, biomedical scientist by training, and currently lead all things health and bio at Crane. We're an early stage fund investing across US, Europe, as well as Asia. Within that, of course, is a health sector that ranges anywhere from medtech to infrastructure on the software side to digital therapeutics. On a personal level, I've done my first angel ticket in medtech. So from a personal perspective, it's a sector I love. It has since exited, so I'm even more in love with it and excited to join you all today.
Hi, everyone. My name is Andrew Cameron. I'm the founder and CEO of FieldTech. And we're developing Tiderite, which is a connected health platform for monitoring and optimization of compression therapy. So compression is a fundamental first-line treatment for multiple indications in the venous and lymphatic space. But despite the fact that it is a first-line treatment, currently the dosage or the pressure is applied totally blind. And so what that means is that there's about a 90% failure to achieve targeted pressure in clinical practice. And then not only that, if you do apply the correct amount of pressure, you can rapidly lose that pressure over time because of a reduction in swelling. And so what we've developed is a wearable pressure sensing device and a digital platform for guiding, maintaining, and refining the target dosage of compression therapy. We have FDA registration as a Class 1 510K exempt product, and we're just now kicking off our US sales in the Veterans Health Administration, which is our initial target market. So yeah, thanks very much for having me.
David.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is David Van Zuydam. I'm CEO of Head Diagnostics. We're another Irish company, of which there are many tonight. Our focus is on digital neurology. Unfortunately, many of us in the room here will experience dementia at some point in our life. And that is growing younger and younger as the years go by. Also, we have an aging population in the world. So by 2050, we're going to see the doubling of people over 60. And health systems and governments are not prepared for this, hence bringing digital neurology. So we assess patients. I've just come from an NHS meeting today. They have long waiting lists. They can't find the neuropsychologist to do the tests. They can't afford them. They can't get the neurologist to do the tests, and they can't afford them. So why not bring in digital neuro with AI? And that's what we do. We offer digital cognition systems, massive AI opportunity, and then we have a few other neuro detection devices that are going through an FDA process at the moment. Our core product is FDA approved. It's in the US currently, and it's about to launch in the UK on the 6th of July. So watch this space. Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you. So I'm going to ask a question to all of you, first of all, and I'll let you decide who answers it first. But when is a medtech company, when it says it's ready for the US, what should that actually mean?
So, speaking from personal experience, there wasn't a specific moment where we said, okay, now we're ready to go to the US. For us, it was more about exploring what the US has to offer and what the product market fit was in the US. And as a result of that, we had an incredible pool from clinicians and clinics in the US where we saw that it was much more tech forward. They had the budgets, and they were ready to adopt tech like ours much more than they did in the UK. And so we were almost pulled into the US. And within a year, our founder moved out there and started developing all our commercial partnerships over there. So yeah, it moves really fast. And I don't think you necessarily are prepared for it as a startup, but I think it's more about the mindset. The US is a huge minefield. There's a lot, it's a very complicated healthcare system. So I guess the sooner you start learning about it, the better. Yeah, I guess you can never really be prepared for it, but you can do as much as possible by leveraging everyone around you.
Amazing. Thank you. Anybody else want to add to that?
Yeah, I'll just add, I mean, it's like almost going to a fancy dress. You want to be prepared. You want your best dress. You want the timing to be right, and you want to be the winner of the night. So by getting ready for the US, you have to have your FDA clearance. That's a given. You've got to have money to launch. You've got to be able to market, and you should have your first key customers lined up who you've already done your research on your early pilots with. And then I think that gives you a really fast start. Your traction will come much quicker if you're well set up from the beginning. Don't make too many mistakes when you're commercial, because that'll really let you down, and bad news travels very fast over there. So I'd say just get the basics right first, but definitely ensure that you've got some decent customers to launch with, to have the, essentially the winner of the night, so to speak. But be prepared for pitfalls on the way through, and have your game plan ready for those pitfalls, from technology downfalls to governance problems to potential tax problems because of a rigorous tax system. Be ready for everything. Be really well prepared.
And I'll just add that, you need regulatory to be allowed to sell. You need someone who wants to buy it, but you need to have a way for them to pay for it. Reimbursement is absolutely fundamental to be allowed to, enter the US market. So don't forget reimbursement.
Correct.
they've covered all bases. So I think it's all there. I would just make the distinction. In my opinion, it's when you've signed your first partner. So that's after all the pilots have been done, and that's after clearance. I just want to stress that clearance doesn't necessarily mean adoption. So usually it's the signing of the first partner and building on that momentum. That's the signal for you to go, in my opinion.
So I want to pick up on something Carolina mentioned, and it's something that we also spoke about in our pre-session. Your CEO moved out to the States. Is that something that you think has helped you in building up that commercial traction in the States? Is that something that you would recommend for other companies? And I would like to hear what the others have to say about that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. It's made a huge difference, the fact that they're there, even in terms of the investors that they're meeting, but also the clinics that we're working with. Most of them, a lot of them were actually just a call from, hey, I'm flying off to Chicago tomorrow. Can you come and meet me? Can I give you a demo? And it's turned into a full-blown commercial contract. So being there definitely helped the company. Even something as simple as time zones, for example, doesn't really come in the way if you're even in New York speaking to the West Coast versus London speaking to the West Coast. So yeah, it's been incredibly important. But I obviously know that a lot of startups can't do that. But I'm just speaking from a personal view.
I think it's critical. Without a doubt, it's a warning. We tell a lot of our founders who are selling into the US, if you're planning to go there, you need to be there from a founder perspective. We know founder-led sales are successful. And when we're talking about these contracts that are quite sizable, the reality is they're very unlikely to happen across a conference call. And the founders here can speak to that. It's critical that you're there, or at least establishing a team that is capable of selling on your behalf. But fundamentally, what a lot of these partners want to see is the creator of the technology, the founder behind it, because you know how to sell your own product the best. And to that degree, we want to see you there on the ground.
Yeah, I haven't done it myself yet, but I have moved from Australia to Ireland, so that was definitely a demonstration that I can uproot. But yeah, I think, for us, we have our head of business development in the USA. We're now raising our Series A, and a big chunk of that is going to be building out our US commercial team, including our chief commercial officer. So yeah, we definitely appreciate the need to be on the ground and to just have that constant exposure. You can't kind of intermittently, go in and out and have people remember you. You need to be there and in their face the whole time, I think.
Yeah, 100% agree. I mean, a couple of years ago, I was speaking to a gentleman who sold beds to hospitals, and he had a team over in the US, but he was finding that he was selling the beds, but they weren't actually being utilized properly. And the only way he solved the problem was to go out there. He spoke directly to the hospitals, found out that they didn't know how to use the beds because they hadn't been trained properly, and solved the problem by being on the ground. So I think when you're at the coalface in any relationship, you understand what the problems are and you can fix them quicker, can do the deals better, quicker, faster. I was in New York just the other day, face-to-face, very big hospital chain, 28 hospitals, and it was really exciting to be in New York face-to-face with a hospital who's going to make a key decision about your product. And if I did that on a conference call, it wasn't going to happen the same way. So absolutely, you got to be there. Maybe start slowly, but definitely get out to wherever you're going to go, Boston, etc. And there's a great conference called Select USA. They look at inbound investment into the USA, and you meet all the different states and all the different leads from the government organizations. So a good one to go to.
Good tip. So I'll throw one out to all of you, slightly different. What is more important, reimbursement or getting your FDA clearance?
Well, I see FDA is like, it's a stopgap. Like you have to, it's a gateway. You have to do the FDA, but like the reimbursement is what fundamentally will be, your measure of how you can grow. And like, if you don't have that capability to scale because no one can pay for it or find a pathway to paying for it, you can have a product that works, that people want, that is regulatory approved, and just falls over and dies because you run out of steam. So yeah, reimbursement is extremely critical.
Anybody else?
I mean, from an investor perspective, either or, if that makes sense. So in some cases, we diligence and we de-risk based on regulatory clearance. And in some cases, we diligence and de-risk based on whether or not a pathway exists. And so really, it's which one can you achieve quickly, successfully, and within the timescale that you can afford.
Yeah, I think just to add, if you're developing any product, I think the first thing to consider is, what's the market look like? Is there a code, first of all, before you get into it? Because this is medtech's an 8 to 10 year life journey, and it's a lot of effort. So from your outset, if you're developing something, check that there is some kind of code or some kind of CPT code that's been already put forward, which takes 2 to 3 years to become a CTP1 code. So FDA is crucial, and typically, if you've got through FDA, you've got a good chance of getting that code, or there is already a code in place. So we were very fortunate to have a code, and it's really opened the door to us. And I think we may be coming to some other questions later. So once that door's open, FDA, and you got the code, well, let's talk about the commercial step after that. So you're not quite there yet, even with the FDA or with the code. There's still a bit of work to be done.
Yeah, I agree. So they work very closely together. And with regards to our device, which is a class 1 and can be potentially used as a well-being product rather than a medical technology product, we obviously went down the medical technology route, but we know that some competitive companies have gone down the well-being route. So there, the FDA wasn't as important as it was with regards to its effect on reimbursement, because those competitor companies now cannot market themselves to clinics as a technology that brings back additional revenue because of the reimbursement. And that is because they are not FDA medical device, like under the medical device name under the FDA. So they work hand in hand, I would say. But yes, if you have FDA, but you don't have a proper reimbursement code, then it can be really difficult to commercialize.
So we have an investor. Yara is an investor. Can you please give us your perspectives on what makes a medtech company, genuinely investable and ready for the US?
I think it depends on the stage that you're coming in at. I think we come on the early side, so we try to have vision forward as much as we can. Realistically, you have to be in a position where you have your evidence and you're ready from a regulatory pathway. Have you started to speak to KOLs? Have you got a network out there? Do you have investors in mind who can help bridge you in that sort of Series B, almost like sort of death zone, if you will? It's quite frustrating. A lot of investors that we see across Europe, especially in the medtech space, are quite risk averse compared to what we see in the US. It's frustrating, but it's a reality. I think try to utilize that as best as you can. Try to utilize who you have on from an advisor and a board perspective, as well as who your investors are, to help bridge those gaps as well. I'd encourage you to stress their own networks as well. Head out to conferences that make sense. I'd make sure that you have sufficient amount of capital, or are raising sufficient amount of capital before you make that step. The last thing you want to do is head out there and 6 months in, you're like, oh no, we need a bridge. And I think we all know in this room, fundraising a bridge is painful. It's not easy at all. But the reality of the situation is the medtech sector is one of the most rigorously regulated sectors known today. I think the FDA has a lot more lenient rules around health tech, and we can classify certain solutions as wellness to get them to the market quicker. But the reality is you're building in an area that takes you anywhere from 10 to 20 years to get to the market. It can feel like a very long uphill battle. And to that end, I think it's very important that you pick the right partners, that they understand who you are and what you're selling, as well as the timeline. And sit down and have extensive sessions that help you understand what it's like to build in the US. Ask that tough question. Am I selling to the US? Does it make sense? Or am I more of a European play? Am I more of an Asian play? The US isn't the solution for everyone. I appreciate that's the topic today, so we'll lean on that. But sometimes it's not the case. I think really, as simple as this sounds, really have a sit down and think and stress test a lot of your solutions. But if you are at the point where you've de-risked, you've spoken to the FDA, you have an application running, codes exist, jump with it and hope you're supported by those investors behind you. And if not, then really fuel it with advisors or people who can.
So on that note, I mean, there are different ways of going about it, and I totally agree. There is no one size fits all. Every company is slightly different. But David, you were talking a little bit about how to enter the hospital system, and do you want to just give us a few words around that?
Yeah, I think you need to take your time because they are going to delay you. So you need to be prepared to take your time and work through it methodically, but with a really good strategic approach where you've nearly scouted out your target, the hospital system. You've got to understand exactly what they're looking for. These people are highly professional, very finicky, very governance focused, and they will not take less than 100%. And remember, you're dealing with all the competitors as well at the back door. So if you have all that right, your strategy, your focus, your target, and you know what your customers are doing, I do believe you will be successful if you have a good product, which is the key piece as well. In our approach, we've been speaking to one hospital network for the guts of a year, and we're very close to a deal right now. Everything's been piloted. We've gone through their legal system. We've gone through their tech team system. We've gone through their HIPAA regulation, their BAA documentation, which means you abide to the HIPAA regulations. We've spoken to their clinical KOLs. We've traveled out to them 3 or 4 times. They've demoed our product, and they still haven't bought it. And that's been over the guts of a year. So be prepared to have the funding to secure your company for that year or even a year and a half before you get in. But then you've also got to be super tenacious, be focused on driving through on everything, every single meeting, and just be very professional in every meeting. Never let your guard down, or be my honest advice here is just be super professional in everything that you do there. I think, the odd conference is always very good. You mentioned that, Yara. If you're in a conference and your customer sees you, then they respect that, and they'll see that you're very competitive versus the groups that are there in those conferences. Get speaking points as well. If you are a speaker at some of those conferences, all these things add value that they know and can trust you. And then the deal comes, and the deal be convoluted. Then you get the legal agreement, and you've got to work through that. So when that comes, that's another guts of a few months before you actually sign on the dotted line and go to revenue. That's for the large hospital chains. For the more regional type size hospitals in the US, sometimes they're feeding off the larger hospitals. So if you crack a hospital deal, you sometimes feed into 20 regional hospitals that you didn't even know existed, had a relationship with the larger US hospital. And to give you a bit of context on size, some hospitals, they have 30 to 50 hospitals in their network. So in Ireland, we have a few key regional hospitals. The scale there is so big. If you crack one, you're in. And you're in for a long time because they've done so much work with you that they don't want to go through that again. So that'll be how I'd summarize it in total.
Thank you for that. So Andrew, if reimbursement is a difficult thing to do, how do you go about that?
Yeah, so we're a class 1 device. So actually, regulatory was the easy thing for us. The reimbursement was tricky. There are reimbursement codes that are available to us. So for example, remote therapeutic monitoring or remote physiological monitoring. But we looked at how much they reimburse for, and it just wasn't appetizing enough at all. So, RTM is about $135 a month. Then we looked at alternative pathways that circumvent the CMS route, and we saw that the VA, the Veterans Health Administration, was actually a very lucrative market. And now we're, on their federal supply schedule for $2,600 for 2 months treatment. That's a 10x improvement on what we would get outside of the VA system. We still intend to go through the broader reimbursement framework. So we've had our submission now to, the Category 3 CPT codes. And so that's the longer game. But you have to look for interim solutions. And whether that's going through VA, value-based care, all these other pathways that don't necessarily need to have a code, you need to be open to those, I think.
Just one final point. I think the beauty of the US market is that there are many different pathways to getting that, and I think it's a leverage that we don't necessarily see on the Europe side. So it's an exciting step to take.
Amazing.
And Willem, just to add, there's a breakthrough devices program. They've just brought back in the immediate code, so that's something for everyone to look through. It went away for a while, it's just come back. So it's just been brought into law.
Amazing. So one of my companies got a breakthrough last a few months ago. But anyway, just quick sort of fire answers. Okay, I'm going to ask 2 questions, but I want 2 really quick answers because we're about up on time. So one, any piece of advice that you would give to a medtech company? And two, we have a panel coming up soon, which is about how much capital do you need to get into the United States? So can you answer both of those questions really quickly? All of you. 4. Whoever you want.
Okay, so capital. I would say around 40,000. That includes
40,000
pounds.
Oh.
That is to incorporate all the sort of beginning paperwork that you need to do, and about 15K to move the founder. Then in terms of the tips, just utilize the expertise that are on the ground. People in the US are extremely professional. They know what they're talking about. A lot of them are experts. They get trained really intensively. Utilize their knowledge. Every single person I have spoken to in the US seems like an expert in their field. Obviously, you have to find them, but when you do, and if they're supportive of your technology, then go for it and utilize the expertise and the advice that is given to you.
My numbers are way skewed then compared to yours. I think they're in the fantastic. If you can, that's incredible. I'd love to pick your brains how, but my numbers are more in the tens of millions, depending on your device, because you're looking to fund a trial. So 20 plus, I would say. From an advice perspective, just plan. That's all I could say. Plan as much as you can on this side to hopefully make your life slightly easier on the other side.
So my tip would be look at who has the money and who's at risk. And if you can kind of find that, like that's really going to be a nice way to sort of, know where you can start to commercialize in the USA. And that's even looking at the types of patients, so a young, otherwise healthy individual that is still working and is covered by their employer's insurance is an easier mark than say an 85-year-old pensioner. And that's sad. It's cynical, but it is the way it is. And then, how much does it take? We're raising 5 million euros, so that's probably the exact amount, I think. So no, we're trying to also bring in strategics to be a bit more lean, so that actually, has to be more cost effective.
Quickly, David.
Yeah, very quickly from our side. I mean, I think you've got to go and with a product, and in our case, we've raised 9 million to date, and we spend a lot of it, and we're raising another 3 million now. We acquired an asset that I believe is worth in excess of 20 million. And that product took a lot of time, effort to build and went through clinical trials. We're going through some clinical work ourselves. And then you need time, team, tenacity, 3 T's. You need a lot of time. You got to be tenacious. I mentioned it earlier. And you need an excellent team. You can put a very good person or a few of them on the ground in the US. It's going to help you hugely. So I'll leave it like that. 3 T's. Thank you.
Amazing. Please allow me to thank everybody. Thank you so much.
So yeah, I'm Paul Thompson from Garland Surgical. Historically, it's been advantageous for European medtech companies to get some sales in their own market before going to the US. But with the new most favored nation status, are you recommending companies ignore that and go straight for the US market?
We're using Switzerland as our test bed commercialization market, and it's just helping us iron out the kinks before we target the USA. So I think, we see Europe as a way of let's say preparing ourselves for US.
But have you therefore gone for a higher pricing for Europe? Because that's the reason for the question.
I wish, no.
So does that mean that you're going to be messed up when you go to the US in terms of pricing? This is the MFN question. I don't know, Yara.
There was an element of that. So there is a case of sometimes underpricing on this side and then getting to the US and then you being slightly ignored. I do think you should land within a certain country across Europe and expand. And then I would try to keep yourself as open as flexible from a negotiation perspective when you come across the US. Price is probably the one thing that's still stressing me out to this day. It's a little bit of a difficult one, but if you can back the valuation that you've shown through your sales and your product, then stand with 2 feet. I think it'd be good.
Thank you. And then just, a lot of the products are under a coding system there, so they'll only pay what's the code price is. In our case, we actually have a slightly higher price across Europe. So it's working in reverse. That's because the code in the USA is dictating what we can charge. Privately, it's a different story, but Yeah, that's what we've experienced as well.
I had a similar experience at Quanta. So in dialysis, it's actually more expensive in Europe than it is in the States. So I think every market is slightly different, but I think the most favored nation is it's going to probably permeate through the system more as time goes by. So any other questions?
I was just going to, thank you. I'm Natalie Williams. I'm from Garland Surgical. With regards to the technology assessments that are done in the US, how much health economic data do you have to produce alongside clinical data? So I have a background in medtech, but also pharmaceuticals, where we use a lot of health economic data. So I'm just wondering what the experience is.
So my experience with health economics in the US were much less extensive than the health economics that I had to undertake in the UK. The reason for that is because it's a simpler health economic system, right? You have the reimbursement that are applicable for your technology. This reimbursement brings about, well, in our case, $1,400 per patient per month. And then we then charge a 50% on that. So we charge $700 per patient per month. And so for us, the health economics and the value that we give to the clinic subsequently is much more clear and obvious. So there was a lot less to do there. It was more about exploring which codes are applicable and how do we hit those codes in order to ensure reimbursement.
Yeah, and just to add, I mean, it's easy to break into existing workflow. That's the easiest thing to do in the US. When you're creating new workflows with new products, that's a lot more difficult. If you have a code already, you just fall into that code. And compared to the NHS, we've just built a big health economics model in Europe for the NHS, which they love. But in the US, we didn't really need that. So we have a code already, you get billed, and that's it. So you don't have to worry. You still have to convince the hospitals in some cases that what you're doing is a little bit more efficient than what they're currently doing in that workflow with your particular product. But it's generally a lot easier.
Once again, thank you very much for